and this is our 20 days.
Welcome to our 20 days. Today's episode, we continue the conversation with Tom Roberts, my good friend in Columbus, Ohio. Today we're going to talk about something called Bees and Bourbon. Tom and his good friends Andy and Tom do a beekeeping operation together, and it's an excuse to get together and drink bourbon too. So both good endeavors. So I learned quite a lot about beekeeping and bourbon. We'll spend a little bit of time also talking about Tom's good friend Andy Johanni, who you'll see in the video, and we'll talk about him. Andy also works in a very important role in the Archdiocese of Columbus, Ohio, for the Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church, as the real estate manager there. And Andy is collecting a lot of fire at him these days, I'm sure, as they've announced a bunch of rationalizations for real estate, schools, churches within the Archdiocese of Columbus, and I'm sure that he's in a pretty stressful position these days. So, Andy, I'm thinking about you, buddy. I know it's a tough gig, but needs to be done. So I appreciate your faithfulness to the church. So enjoy the episode, and we'll talk later. From there is Tom and his friend Andy that he mentioned earlier, and his other friend Tom spent some time educating me on beekeeping. So you've got, I think it was 8 different colonies or hives or whatever you call these things. You've got a couple in your backyard out here I'm staring right at. Andy's obviously got a couple of his. Tom's got a couple of his at home as well. So I remember when we got there, and I'm going to use the wrong terms, so please help correct me and get people the right information here. But a hive, to me, at least the way these are built, is they've got a couple of level blocks, just basically for leveling and strength. Mm-hmm. And then there is what basically I think of is kitchen drawers stacked on top of each other. And inside those drawers are vertical frames that the bees end up building out, what I think of anyway, as the actual hive itself, the honeycomb type of design. And those honeycombs are used for different things. They're used for storing food, honey, or for them to survive the winter when there's no pollen to go gather. It's a place where they lay eggs and the larvae mature and, eventually burst out and become, various adult bees. And then the way the bees get in is that at the very bottom of the one drawer, there was a slot when we got across there that I would say is, these drawers are probably 18 inches wide, maybe 24, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, 19 3/4 outside for what we're doing. But yeah,
perfect.
Take off
I knew you'd know.
1.5 inches, yeah.
And
so
then,
it's 18
and then maybe an inch high opening?
It's 3/4 inch.
3/4 of an inch? Okay, Tom's the engineer. I'm a political science major, so that's pretty clear. So, and you'd have bees going out doing their thing, gathering pollen, doing whatever it is they do outside of the hive. And they'd fly back in kind of a landing strip, and they'd hit in front, and there's a little, a foothold where they'd land, and then they'd crawl into this. And then you installed what are they called, reducers? Is that what you call them?
Yeah, entrance reducers.
Entrance reducers. That was basically solid, except for maybe an inch wide opening, something in that neighborhood. So you have basically, call it 3/4 by 3/4 inch hole, where the bees can then come in and out of the hive. So, not that everything ties together, and it doesn't. But as you were talking about helping others kind of find the path. This is a pretty narrow hole, and it's probably 2 bees wide, something like that, plus or minus. And you were explaining, and what was the term you used? Nazzing, I think.
Naznav, nazzing.
So basically, to help other bees find where they need to go, the bees would gather around the outside of this opening. They point their rear ends into the air, and they export a pheromone of some sort. A scent that the other bees go, I got to go there. Mm-hmm. So now in their world, that's a real obvious signal that says, God's over here.
Yes.
It's a lot less obvious for us. But I couldn't help but kind of tie what I knew we were going to talk about today with what I was observing with the bees. I thought that was, we talked a lot yesterday also about things that are instinctual and versus taught, or the bees don't have a brain, as it were, and so they just kind of, and they've been around as probably longer than humans have on the planet. So So they kind of know what they're doing. So sometimes it's just get out of their way and let them do what they do.
Right.
So there's value in that too. Don't, what's the Hippocratic Oath? First rule, don't do no harm.
Right.
So there's part of that of what we're talking about here too with people helping find their faith. Sorry, I kind of rambled a bit there, but
no, but it's amazing. And I was gonna make the point of you like saying interview all these different people and may get different insights and aha moments out of it. And it kind of went back to when you introduced with the that Mead research, where it's like can explain it this way, can explain it this way until you get it. And so seeing all these different perspectives of the same event. I've been doing this beekeeping for years, and I never drew that same analogy. That was the first thing that come to mind for you at being in that at the apiary.
Yeah, and if you ever get the chance to go sit with somebody, and we'll be rolling some video either over top of this or elsewhere that we took while we were doing this, is you're in that classic beekeeper suit, and so it's the first time I'd ever done that. I'll tell you, for those first 5 minutes were a little anxious. One, I'm probably mildly claustrophobic to start with, so I'm in this Stay Puft Marshmallow Guy suit with the the netting across my head and zippered up so they don't get in into a nook and cranny and start stinging me. But it wasn't what I saw that was kind of making me anxious. It was what I heard. So I got used to pretty quickly a lot of bees buzzing around, and every now and then doink, hits you basically between the eyes, but it's hitting the screen. I got used to that pretty quickly. But if I get something over like around my ear, and you hear that, my instinct was to, swat myself, and which would, if it weren't for the beekeeping outfit, would not be a good thing. But yeah, so I found it also very interesting that the senses that I engaged for doing this with you and Andy and Tom yesterday were quite different than I expected. So, and you mentioned Andy earlier. Tell me, kind of describe Andy a little bit for you, or for us.
Boy, I don't. It'd be easy to go into physical characteristics, everything else. Andy is.
How did you meet?
So we met. Our daughters rode together in high school, and so Andy has a daughter.
So let me stop you there because I made this mistake yesterday. When you say rode, it's
so
ROWED, as in rowing and crew,
as
not road as in ROAD.
Yeah. Or RODE.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they played crew, as some people will jokingly say. So they were on the crew team, and our Upper Arlington has a high school program. I don't know that there's another public high school in the state of Ohio that has a crew program.
I've never heard of a school having a crew
there's
program.
Community programs, and then some of the Catholic schools have rowing programs, but I think it's the only public one in the state.
Okay.
There's not many, if there's many.
So and you also met Tom that way.
And so we met Tom Balzerzak through that as well. Can I say? Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anybody's in the witness protection program here, so I think we're good.
So I met through there and just hanging out. I mean, when you go to a regatta, there's a lot of standing around to just watch a short race.
Okay, sorry.
So there's a lot of standing around to watch a short race. And so you're making friends, talking, making conversation. And Andy is an impressive person through and through. And he has a woo component, but he's not out there trying to woo, but he likes being around. I'm going to more stand off the counter and stuff. And Andy is genuinely interested in hearing what you have to say. And
that's what impressed me meeting him. Is it was our conversation for the first 5 minutes was all about him learning about me.
Yes. Yeah. He's wonderful at that, and he's genuine about it as well.
It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel hokey or anything at all. It was literally, ooh, there's a new thing. Tell me about you.
Yeah. And so Andy also has this. He had, when we've gotten some conversations, he said that he made a pact with God because he went to Catholic high school.
Okay.
As well, rival to the Catholic high school I went to in town. But okay. So he went there, went to college, wasn't really, adamant Catholic, anything else, and wasn't sure what he believed. And so he's shared with me that he made a pact with God that's like, okay, I'll go along with this. I'll be part of this. But I'm going to be looking for a flaw. And first time I find something where this isn't true, or
Yeah.
I find this, I'm out of here. And he said, I haven't found one yet. And Andy is also very bright, very, thoughtful. So
Yeah.
he's going to get and go and explore. And so he kind of named that. So I mentioned as that is something that I think about as well. I wasn't able to put together that's what I was doing. And when Andy named that, and this was when we were on a bourbon trip, down in Kentucky,
Right.
together and just chatting at a hotel lobby. That time we had that conversation. And it's just, he named it of like, okay, I've got these doubts, but all this time I've been like, what do I think? What do I believe? Oh no, there is a truth here, and just getting
Yep.
closer to it. And he made a straight out, agreement with God that, okay, I'll go along with this, but
Yep.
I'm out of here if there's an inconsistency or
You need
find.
to hold up your end of the bargain
And
here. Yeah.
it's gone the completely opposite direction of it's just increased his faith.
So he said something to you and I yesterday. Tom had left to go to some other things. He needed to be at the Ohio State football game. That I think we were both impressed. So the three of us were having a pretty wide-ranging discussion about a variety of topics. And we got onto the topic of, I'll say politics in a broad sense, but talking about media, social media, influencers, how messaging is so polarized. There's no gray area. It's, you're either left or right, or liberal or conservative, or right or wrong. There's no flavor of right, in this discussion in today's current world. And you might remember where he got this, but he made the point that said, and he looked right at, I think it was you, and said, God is not nervous.
Right.
And that was just such an insightful thought. So whether he had it on his own or it came from someplace else that I just don't recall, just to apply that thought to what the topic was at hand, was just very compelling to me.
Yeah. Now, he will see things or add those things in, just a paradigm that I would have never come
Yeah.
to or thought about. And it's like, yeah, we're all here, we're all panicked, but that's the human side of us panicking. And this is we're God's creation and God's plan, and we're all put here at a certain time in a certain place for a certain mission. And we may not know what that is. We may spend our lives trying to define what is our purpose or anything else, but we have a purpose, and we might not know what it is. But
So the thing I learned about Andy from a career perspective, he just in the last year or so retired from, maybe I'll mislabel this, kind of an engineering type of job where it was building buildings.
Yeah, real estate development.
Real estate development. So I don't know what his educational background is, if it's engineering or something else. But after he left that role, he now works for the Diocese of Columbus.
Yes.
And he's basically their real estate manager. Perhaps I'm giving the wrong title to it. But as you all know, the Catholic Church holds a lot of real estate. They got a lot of buildings, whether it's churches or schools or whatever.
Yeah.
And you relayed to me, there was another male member of the Upper Arlington crew team that ended up with a pretty significant medical issue and ended up losing both of his legs.
Right.
And he had sent Andy a note of some sort.
Yeah, it was actually his father sent a note when Andy made the move from the construction business and to the Diocese of Columbus. In chatting with Andy, it's like, people just donate land or their property or something to Catholic Church, and there's never anybody that's like, what do we do all of this? How do we leverage this? How do we use it? What do we do? Is there a master plan around this? There just hasn't been, at least in our diocese, a strong role,
A leadership role to make sure these things happen.
to do this. And so he went into that role, and so this gentleman's father sent Andy a note congratulating him, and it said, congratulations on your move from success to significance.
And that really resonated with me when you told me that story. We were on our way to church this morning, and Amy and Tom both were telling this story. And that's just, I remember telling you while we were in church, is, I may steal that.
That's very well done.
That's a pretty poignant statement that there are a lot of us, I count the two of us in this bucket, we've had successful careers by any measure. I'm happy with the outcome of my life. It's been successful, but has it been significant?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, early on, I was blessed that I feel like I can do whatever I want to do. And so people would ask, young in your career, what do you want to be doing 5 years from now? And I was always so interested in so many things that I got to the point where I would say, I don't know what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now, but whatever it is, I want to be identified as one of the best in the field of it. And I just felt like that I'm going to go in, I'm going to learn, I'm going to try and go deep on something and get very good at it. But once I get there, my mind's going to be saying, well, what about that? What about that? And so I want to go someplace different. And so then now with both of my daughters grown out of the house, it's like, all right, I had them fairly young in my 20s, and it's like, okay, I'm 50 years old, I've got no kids in the house, and now what? What do I want to do now? And I had thought that I wanted to go back and teach at that point, and then I got to 50. It's like, well, do I want to do that? And it's like, I don't know, because I'd rather kids that are thirsting for knowledge.
Yeah.
And if I had kids that are thirsted for knowledge, that can inspire and
if you can have
help
your
and
kids as
develop
students,
them.
that's one thing. Yeah.
Right. So then it's like, okay, what do I do? And so I have always been conscious of my legacy and what I want to do and leave a legacy behind. And so I've always just been conscious of that. And so now I'm just questioning for myself, like, what do I do? What is my legacy going to be beyond my family and beyond those people that I've met? How can I have significance as that's been put there? And it's pretty humbling when you just think about, okay, what is my mark going to be? What is my significance of my life going to be, have been?
Hey all, thanks for watching this episode of Our 20 Days. Look for us at our20days.com, and please hit the subscribe button so you're notified of all future episodes as they drop, usually on Thursdays. Thanks for watching.